siblings in Christ, family in faith and in hope and in love, grace to you and peace from God, the source, from Christ, the living water, and from the Spirit, whose gifts overflow. We are fast approaching the midpoint in Lent, and perhaps you find yourself resonating with the words describing Jesus as today's lengthy gospel began. Quote, Jesus, tired out by his journey, was sitting by the well. It was about noon. 11. Tired out by his journey. It was the midpoint of the day in that Samaritan city called Sychar, which has a Hebrew etymology meaning drunkard or falsehood. Talk about give me a drink. Possibly a disparaging nickname used by Jews for the neighboring Samaritan town, otherwise known as Shechem. The woman Jesus met at the well that day was likely tired by her journey as well. But John doesn't exactly offer us the details about her, at least those details. But she too must certainly have been tired out by her journey, being marginalized as a woman in a patriarchal society, being a Samaritan, and thus viewed as less than by her Jewish counterparts, and being unsuccessful in relationship, a detail the gospel writer does disclose to us, 5 husbands and 1 male companion later. 2 people tired out by life and by their journeys meet in the heat of the day, high noon. Jesus, a Jewish man and rabbi, and this woman who is not given a name, only that she was a Samaritan. Besides their weariness, the one thing they have in common is a need for water, for their thirst to be quenched. And Jesus does what Jesus does. He sees the outcast one. He acknowledges this marginalized one. He embraces this disenfranchised one. It was Jesus' approach to humanity which resonated 2,000 years later with a follower, with a disciple named the Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, to whom the city of Chicago and the world bid a fond farewell this past Friday at a most moving homegoing service. We've been reminded since Reverend Jackson's death some weeks ago that it was in 1984, as a candidate for the Democratic nomination for president, that Reverend Jackson famously spoke before the Democratic National Convention and said a very Jesus-y thing. Words so inspired and moving that they were recently shared in a devotional at a recent meeting of the Congregation Council. Reverend Jackson said that night before the convention, quote, "We are not a perfect people, yet we are called to a perfect mission. Our mission, to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to house the homeless, to teach the illiterate, to provide jobs for the jobless, and to choose the human race over the nuclear race." Reverend Jackson continued, "My constituency is the desperate, the damned, the disinherited, the disrespected, and the despised. They are restless and Jackson saw them through the eyes of faith, through the eyes of Jesus. We who are war-weary this day and parched by the desert places of this world are also seen today by the one who invites us to see others who are also weary and thirsting for belonging and for community. Jesus shows us how to live as Jesus, to see others, to acknowledge our common humanity with them, to let the outcast know they are seen and known by God, by seeing them and getting to know them ourselves. Or, as Reverend Jackson would say, to empower those who are disrespected and despised among us to be able to say, I am somebody. We are tasked in this season of Lent with works of love. It's one of the disciplines. Prayer, fasting, and works of love. And this is a good place to begin. Letting others, the world says, are nobodies, know that they are somebody. In these Lenten weeks, the choir will be sending us out from this place, as they have the past few Sundays, with a traditional South African song, Come, Walk with Us. The journey is long. For 28,000 runners in the LA Marathon today, there is a weariness and a thirst as they run their race. For us, there is a weariness and a thirst as we make our way to Easter's joy. To our neighbor in need, there is a weariness and a thirst as life comes at them from every direction. And so we are invited to run the Lenten race. We're at the midway point. Prayer, fasting, works of love, even when we're tired of this journey and its demands, to return again and again to the living waters of baptism, which always promise to refresh us. Jesus, the living water, gives you water, this water, always. Jesus, the bread of life, feeds you with the bread of his presence, always. Jesus, the one who sees nobodies and makes them somebodies, sees you, and through your eyes looks upon the weary constituency which our baptism into him bequeaths to us, the desperate, the damned, the disinherited, the disrespected, and the despised, the disciples whom Jesus sees and loves. In Christ, we are all baptized into our common humanity and washed in the living waters of radical grace.